Count Dracula. A work of fiction, yes, but of course, inspired by real horrors. The real horrors of Vlad the Impaler. The real Dracula.
Hello. I am Dr. Peter Persil. I'm a psychiatrist and neurosurgeon, and during my spare time I like to, look into history, as it is my favourite subject. And I like to get horror and dissect the fiction and the facts. So, in this one, as you've guessed already from the introduction, I'll be giving you the history on the real Dracula, as this is called Dr. Persil's Real Horror. So, Dracula, a notorious, infamous creature from the world of fiction. For over a century and a quarter now, this fictitious being has gone from a story of a fictional character in a book to a pop culture phenomenon, being portrayed and depicted and adapted through so many franchises in horror and comedy and cartoons, and with many other live action adaptations. All starting with Bela Lugosi in the 1931 film Dracula, creating the modern trope of the character, being a Transylvanian Romanian man with an aristocratic look to him. And that image has gone on to be recreated in the Hammer House of Horror series, to the 1992 film Bram Stoker's Dracula, and of course the other adaptations we've had on this. In 1897, the book Dracula came out. It was written by Bram Stoker. But of course, for his book, he looked into a lot of history, using fact to create fiction. Which brings us to the character Dracula. Well, in a lot of adaptations, Dracula, in his human years, was Vlad the Impaler, a real person as well. So Vlad the Impaler, let's have a look here. I have the records here on this computer that I'm looking at. Okay, so Vlad the Impaler. His first reign being from October to November 1448. His second reign, April 15th, 1456 to July 1562, to his third reign from December 1476 to January 1477. Born somewhere in the year between 1428 and 1431. It is not recorded when his exact date of birth was, but it was one of those years. And he died in the December of 1476 or January 1477. Aged either 45 or 49. It's not that clear. Born in Romania, given his birth name being Vlad III, or Vlad Tepes, or Vlad III Dracula. He was the Prince of Romania. He was born there during a time of conflict in Europe, even taken to Hungary during his childhood, where he was a prisoner for many years and put under some torture. He was the son of Vlad Dracula II. Of course, eventually Vlad returned to Romania and was prince of his country, Transylvania. And of course, when he returned and became the prince, he was a ruthless leader. And to put fear in his enemies during the times of conflict, he inserted a stake into a person's anus, putting butter on top of the stake so that they would slide down, giving them a slow, agonizing death as the stake slowly goes through their body, not making it a pleasant fate or death at all. Vlad got great delight and joy out of watching this. Eventually, he had more people executed and suffering this punishment. Even had some people with weights fastened onto their wrists and ankles so they would slide down heavier. Getting a lot of delight out of this, he even sat and feasted in front of his work, greatly admiring it, his garden becoming the forest of the impaled. And he punished many people, from men to women, even children. He did not hesitate to do that. A ruthless man indeed. And you didn't even need to do much to get yourself of that fate. According to one record, one of his servants, when serving him his food whilst he feasted in front of his forest of the impaled, was holding his nose down. He asked the servant, "Why are you holding your nose?" And his servant said, "Because, my lord, I can't stand the god-awful stench of rotting corpses in this garden." And I imagine it must have really reeked of dead bodies because of them dying. So, as punishment, Vlad gave him a tall stake so he could tower over everyone so he wouldn't have to endure the smell. A terrible fate, I know. This gave him the name Vlad the Impaler, where he would impale people, of course. Being a ruthless, brutal man. Whatever he had experienced as a child in Hungary with the enemy clearly made him what he is. He even killed monks, and 3 monks was there to confront him. He killed 2 monks, but was never recorded what the 3rd monk told him. All that there was said that he let the monk go. Of course, he probably did so he could tell the story of Vlad the Impaler. With this historical being, well, Vlad Tepes, eventually he went by other names, not just Vlad the Impaler. Excuse me. He got other names such as Dracula or Dracula, which means son of the devil or dragon in his native language. This, of course, inspired the Irish writer Abraham Stoker, or professionally known as Bram Stoker, to write his book Dracula. Now, before Dracula, vampires were seen as blood-sucking demons. It was from Stoker's novel that vampires were given the modern trope they're given today, where they appear more human, can't walk in sunlight, and have supernatural abilities. That's what Stoker put into his book, and like what George A. Romero did for the zombie genre, Stoker did long before with the vampire genre, creating the most infamous vampire of all time. Of course, the film adaptation took a while. 10 years after Stoker's death, there was a film made called Nosferatu, which was not very well received by Stoker's widower, and they wanted the film removed. But the film has survived, and over the years has gone on to be a classic silent film. One film they did have the approval of was the 1931 adaptation, Bela Lugosi, but of course Stoker has been dead now for over 108 years. So after 70 years, the writer's copyright expires, so we can do as we please. Well, writers can do what they please with Dracula. The character of Dracula has gone on to be adapted in so many forms and Hollywood. One adaptation called Dracula Untold shows Dracula making a deal with a vampire to be immortal, or to at least fight his enemies. In Stoker's novel, though, the fiction that comes in is Dracula lost his lover and was angry with the Lord and turned to the dark side of evil, where he consumed the blood of God or Christ or whatever, and became this vampire and was cursed. That's where the fiction came in. Or was it? All we know is that Vlad the Impaler, in many ways he is immortal, because history has gone on to remember him for that. And of course vampires themselves are immortal in fiction. See, I think in 100 years' time we will still be talking about these creatures. They will still be carried out in fiction. That is how it will go. So, Vlad the Impaler, the real Dracula. I'm grateful we didn't live in those times, or have him as a leader. Are there any of his descendants that could still be out there? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. Of course, if only Vlad knew the horror he would inspire, the real horrors that gave us the fiction we have today. Well, I think I've said all I needed to say about Vlad the Impaler and the origins of Dracula and its real horrors. So what do you think to this? Do you think Vlad the Impaler should be respected and appreciated for giving us the king of the vampires, Dracula, or do you think it's unsettling that Dracula is a work of fiction today because of him? The most recent adaptation I ever saw of Dracula was the BBC miniseries that came on at the beginning of 2020. That was a good take on it, I think. But anyway, yes. What gave us the horror that is fiction? Well, I always say stories are true, just retold differently to create the fiction. So what do you think to this topic? Do you, as I've said already? Well, I have been Dr. Peter Persil, and this has been Dr. Persil's Real Horrors, talking about Vlad the Impaler, the real Dracula. Until next time, well, of course, feel free to subscribe to the official Random Horror YouTube channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell, and to share with your friends, whatever pleases you. and I shall be back soon with some more real horrors. Till next time, don't have nightmares.